stated in treaties. The anti-abuse rule, the limitation on benefits rule, and I haven't put this down in any depth. There's a simplified version and there's complicated versions. In the Multilateral Convention in 2017, it is they've outlined some of the key things. So it denies treaty benefits if you've not got a qualified person. Then it goes on to define what a qualified person is. And it provides some treaty benefits to non-qualified people, but only in certain situations, and it sets out a whole load of tests to determine whether it's qualified or not. The wording in the multilateral instrument and in Article 29 of the OECD model is slightly different, and again I've given you both so you can get some sort of idea. Definition of situations where a resident is a qualified person covers an individual, certain publicly traded companies and entities, certain non-profit organisations and pension funds. So you see that there's a sort of a solid definition. If you say, well, I'm one of those things, tick, I'm a qualified person, so you apply the test. And again, as I say, you don't need to know what it says, you just need to know it exists for this course. We've got the UN Model Tax Convention as well to look at, and that's similar to the OECD, but I've not tried to pick out the differences, because basically what the UN model does, it was updated in advance of some of the other updates, and it's just picked the wording which was in the Beck's Action Report. So it's pretty similar to the OECD model, but you look at it and you'll say it's different because it's more wordy and it looks different, but actually it's pretty much saying the same thing. Okay, so the purpose of going through that is really to say, generally speaking, when you're looking at a double taxation treaty and a provision that you're looking at to claim relief, you have first to ask the question, does the treaty apply? Is there an overriding provision or an overriding reason why the treaty doesn't apply, either to the group you're looking at or to the transaction you're looking at? And all these things come into play in order to determine whether that's the case or not. So, quite significant provisions. Other treaty provisions that we've not gone through, well, there's a special provision in relation to shipping and transport. There were moons ago, there were lots of air shipping and transport treaties that were standalone treaties that only dealt with international travel. Gradually over time, they tended to be reduced in number, and shipping and transport is dealt with in most bilateral treaties. So it's only to make you aware that there's a bit of a special rule in relation to shipping and transport that again we'll probably cover next term. But I've outlined what it says in the article. Another provision that we don't cover on this course is the non-discrimination clause in treaties. And again, that's because that's quite complicated. And you've just got enough with everything I've taught you already not to need to go on to talk about this one too in the first term. But there is a non-discrimination article. And it deals with, and I've written it there so you can see what it is. It's exactly the same in the UN model as it is in the OECD model. And what it covers, a lot of what it covers is individuals. So it covers nationals, and it gives some rights to stateless people. There's a provision on permanent establishments, which is important to the subject area that we look at here. It deals with deductions, foreign enterprises and scope. It's one of the very few topics that hasn't been changed by BEPS at all, because this is trying to put more people on the same footing, and BEPS is sort of looking at when they're on a different footing to start with. But from the purpose of this course, the one thing that is most important is the provision in relation to permanent establishments. And all that says is quite simply that the taxation on a permanent establishment which an enterprise of a contracting state has in the other contracting state shall not be less favourably levied in that other state than the taxation levied on enterprises of that other state carrying on the same activities. Okay? So what you're doing there is, if you've got a company doing business in another state through a permanent establishment, you look at how the other country taxes that permanent establishment. You think about, if we had set up a subsidiary, how would that subsidiary have been taxed? And if the branch is taxed less favourably, then it can require the same treatment as if it was a subsidiary. Now, it is interesting because there are countries that have branch taxes. They might say that if you're trading through a subsidiary, you pay tax at a rate of 20%. If you're trading through a branch, you'll pay tax at 20% or plus 5%, so 25%. Why do you think some countries have branch taxes? If we've got a subsidiary and it pays a dividend to its parent, what right to tax does the...
It helps reduce double taxation at parent and branch level.
No, I didn't really see that.
I think it's to, kind of branch is not corporate, it's to actually, how should I say, investment oriented. Try to make the companies more comfortable with incorporating companies rather than working in the branch route.
Maybe a little bit of that, but that's not what I'm thinking about.
In order to compensate withholding tax?
Yeah. Yeah. If you've got a subsidiary and you've earned profits in the subsidiary, and then the dividend is paid out, the country of the subsidiary taxes the profits, and then it can tax the dividend going out at a reduced rate, perhaps under the treaty, but it can deduct withholding tax, and it's not always reduced to nil. If you've got a branch, then you've earned your profits, you pay your tax, and then the profits sort of go out of one pocket, the pocket of the subsidiary, into the other pocket, the pocket of the entity. They're all the same thing, the head office and the branch are one person, so you're not going to pay a dividend back, so there's no right to withhold tax. So there's some countries in the world that like to have a withholding tax, and if you structure your operations into that country through a branch, don't have the right to levy that tax. So they have a branch tax, which often they actually describe as being, because we can't tax the profits on repatriation from our country to the country of the head office. And I mean, the US had a branch tax of 5% for many years. Lots of countries had branch taxes. A lot less countries have branch taxes